In the twilight of the heroic age, when mortals and gods still crossed paths, a single act of pride and envy ignited a war that would echo through eternity. It began not with swords, but with a wedding. When Peleus, king of the Myrmidons, married the sea nymph Thetis, every god of Olympus was invited, except one. Eris, the goddess of discord, arrived unbidden. In her fury, she cast among the guests a golden apple inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, queen of the heavens; Athena, goddess of wisdom and war; and Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire. None would yield, and Zeus himself refused to judge. Instead, he appointed a mortal prince, one whose choice would shape the fate of nations: Paris of Troy. Each goddess tempted the young prince with a gift. Hera promised him power, the rule over all kingdoms. Athena offered unmatched wisdom and glory in battle. But Aphrodite whispered of love. She would give him the heart of the most beautiful woman on earth. Blinded by desire, Paris chose Aphrodite. His decision crowned her the fairest, but it also earned him the eternal wrath of Hera and Athena. With that single choice, he set the stage for war. The prize was Helen of Sparta, already wed to King Menelaus. With Aphrodite's aid, Paris traveled to Sparta. There, Helen looked upon him, and her heart was seized by the spell of the goddess. Together they fled across the sea to Troy, leaving behind a husband and a kingdom dishonored. When Menelaus discovered the betrayal, his fury shook all of Greece. He sought his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, who commanded the greatest power among the Achaeans. Together they vowed not only to reclaim Helen, but to punish Troy for its insult. Agamemnon summoned the kings and princes of Greece to fulfill the oath they had sworn years earlier, to defend the marriage of Helen. And so the greatest host the world had ever seen was assembled. Heroes answered the call. Achilles, son of Peleus, swift-footed and unmatched in battle. Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca. Ajax the great, towering and indomitable. Diomedes, fierce and relentless. 1,000 ships set sail, blackening the Aegean Sea, their sails billowing like storm clouds. Across the sea stood Troy, proud and radiant, its walls raised by gods themselves. King Priam, wise yet weary with age, ruled alongside his valiant son Hector, the shield of the city. The arrival of the Greek fleet brought thunder to the shores of Ilion. The Trojan War had begun. For 9 long years, the war dragged on, neither side able to claim victory. Battles raged, heroes fell, and the gods themselves descended into the fray, favoring one side or the other. Yet the final act of the tragedy still lay ahead. As the war stretched into its 10th year, a shadow of ruin fell upon the Greek camp. The god Apollo, angered by Agamemnon's arrogance, unleashed a plague upon the Achaeans. Arrows of disease fell from his divine bow, striking warriors and beasts alike. The cause was Agamemnon's insult to Chryses, a Trojan priest of Apollo, whose daughter had been taken as spoil. When the priest pleaded for her return, Agamemnon scorned him. To end the devastation, the king reluctantly released the girl, but his pride demanded a cruel vengeance. Agamemnon seized another prize, the maiden Briseis, taken from none other than Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Greeks. Enraged, Achilles withdrew from battle. He swore before the gods that he would not fight again until the Greeks came crawling to him in despair. Without their champion, the Greeks faltered. The Trojans, led by Hector, surged forward. Their chariots thundered across the plain, driving the Achaeans back to the very shores where their ships lay moored. The balance of war had shifted. Hector, eldest son of Priam, became the embodiment of Trojan valor. He led from the front, his spear cutting down foes, his presence inspiring courage in his people. He fought not for glory or ambition, but for his city, his wife Andromache, and his infant son Astyanax. Where Achilles fought for honor, Hector fought for love. And in that contrast lay the tragedy of the war. On the ramparts of Troy, Andromache begged him not to return to the field, fearing the doom foretold by oracles. But Hector, torn between duty and devotion, chose to stand as the last bulwark of his people. His name became a song upon the lips of the Trojans. Hector, the unbreakable shield. The Trojans pressed harder each day, driving the Greeks to desperation. Their ships, lifelines to home, burned beneath Trojan fire. Panic spread among the Achaeans as defeat loomed ever closer. The Greek leaders, humbled, turned to Achilles. They offered him treasures, lands, and even the return of Briseis. Odysseus, master of persuasion, begged him to reconsider. But Achilles, hardened by wrath, refused. His pride was a fortress higher than Troy's walls. The fate of the Greeks hung by a thread. Amid this despair rose Patroclus, the dearest companion of Achilles. Unable to watch the ruin of his people, he begged his friend to lend him his armor. If he entered the battlefield disguised as Achilles, the Trojans might falter in fear. Achilles consented, but with a warning. Drive them back from the ships, but go no further. Do not challenge destiny at the walls of Troy. Clad in the divine armor, Patroclus rode forth. The Greeks rallied, believing their champion had returned. The Trojans quailed before him, and for a moment, the tide turned. But destiny does not yield so easily. Disguised in the armor of Achilles, Patroclus charged into battle like a blazing star. The Greeks, emboldened, surged behind him. The Trojans faltered, believing the invincible son of Peleus had returned. Patroclus fought with unmatched fury, slaying warrior after warrior, pushing the enemy back from the burning ships. His valor shone like a beacon of hope, yet the fire in his heart drove him too far. Forgetting Achilles' warning, he pursued the Trojans to the very gates of Troy. There, the gods themselves intervened. Apollo, unseen, struck Patroclus from behind, dazing him. His spear shattered and his strength faltered. In that moment, Hector, Prince of Troy, advanced. With a thrust of his spear, he pierced Patroclus's body. As life faded, Patroclus whispered his prophecy. It was not you who struck me down, Hector, but Apollo. Yet hear this. Soon, Achilles will come, and your death will follow mine. Hector stripped the armor from the fallen warrior, not knowing he had clad himself in his own doom. When word of Patroclus's death reached Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greece collapsed in anguish. He covered himself with ash, tearing his hair, crying out to the heavens. His mother, Thetis, rose from the sea to comfort him. Achilles confessed, without Patroclus, life itself had no meaning. He swore vengeance, though Thetis warned him that if he returned to battle, his own death would soon follow. Achilles answered with resolve, "Let me die at once, since I failed to protect my friend. Only let me avenge him first." Thetis sought out Hephaestus, the god of the forge, to craft new armor for her son. The divine smith labored, and from his anvil rose a masterpiece, a shield vast and shining, engraved with the heavens, the seas, and the lives of men. It was not just a weapon, but a vision of the world itself. Clad in this divine armor, Achilles shone like a god of war, his very presence striking terror into the Trojans. Returning to the battlefield, Achilles unleashed a storm of fury. His spear cut through Persian, typo should be Trojan, ranks like fire through dry grass. The river Scamander, swollen with blood, rose against him, but even the waters could not halt his rage. The Trojans fled before him, but Hector remained. Bound by honor, he could not abandon his city. At the gates of Troy, the two champions met, Achilles, the rage of Greece, and Hector, the shield of Troy. For a moment, fear overtook Hector, and he ran. Around the walls of the city they circled 3 times, until Athena, disguised, tricked Hector into standing his ground. The duel was fierce, but brief. Hector hurled his spear. It missed. Achilles struck true, piercing Hector's neck. As Hector fell, he begged, "Return my body to my family. Let me not be food for dogs." But Achilles, still blinded by wrath, refused. There are no pacts between lions and men. He bound Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it through the dust as the people of Troy wailed from the walls. Night after night, Achilles dragged Hector's body around the camp, defiling the fallen hero. The Trojans wailed from their walls, powerless to save their prince. Even the gods looked down in pity. At last, Zeus decreed that Hector must be returned to his people. Guided by Hermes, the old king Priam slipped into the Greek camp. Entering the tent of Achilles, he fell to his knees, clasped the hands that had slain his son, and whispered, "Remember your father, Achilles. I am old, broken, and childless. Return to me the body of my son, so that I may bury him with honor." The words pierced Achilles' heart. For the first time since Patroclus's death, he wept not in wrath, but in sorrow. He saw in Priam's grief the shadow of his own fate. Moved, he returned Hector's body and granted a truce for the funeral. The people of Troy buried their champion with tears and prayers, their mourning echoing through the city, like a dirge for their own future. Yet the war dragged on. Year after year, neither side could break the other. The walls of Troy, built by gods, withstood every assault. Then rose the cunning of Odysseus of Ithaca. He devised a stratagem unlike any other. A giant wooden horse, hollow within, left as a supposed offering to Athena. The Greeks pretended to sail away, leaving the horse behind as a token of surrender. The Trojans, divided in council, debated its fate. Some urged its destruction, others its dedication to the gods. The priest Laocoon warned, "Beware of Greeks, even when they bring gifts." But when sea serpents emerged from the waves and crushed him and his sons, the Trojans took it as a divine sign. Believing themselves victorious, they dragged the horse into the heart of their city. That night, as Troy feasted in celebration, the hidden warriors crept from the horse's belly. They opened the gates, and the Greek army, which had returned under cover of darkness, stormed the city. Flames devoured the temples and palaces. Blood filled the streets. Priam was slain at his altar. Andromache was dragged into slavery, and the infant Astyanax, son of Hector, was hurled from the walls. The proud city of Troy, which had withstood a decade of war, was consumed in a single night of fire and betrayal. So ended the Trojan War, not with a battle, but with a ruse. A war born of vanity and desire, fueled by wrath and pride, and ended by cunning deception. The Greeks returned home, though many would meet bitter fates. Agamemnon slain by his own wife, Odysseus wandering 10 years before reaching Ithaca, Achilles destined to fall to an arrow in his heel. Troy was reduced to ash, Yet its story endured. The poets sang of its heroes, of love and fury, of gods and men, until their voices became the immortal verses of Homer's Iliad. The Trojan War was not merely a clash of armies. It was the crucible of legend, a tale carved into the heart of Western memory, whispering still that glory and ruin walk hand in hand, and that no wall, however strong, can withstand the designs of fate.